Matt
Hey,
Larrabee, how you doing, man?
hello. Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. I appreciate you
Nice.
letting me reschedule. I think we are live now. Let me just make sure we're all up and running. Let me
Hey, I
make sure the
hear.
chat can see us, and if so, we will get this thing off to the races. So
Nice.
yeah, listen, I apologize. This was supposed to happen yesterday, and by the way, chat, let me know if you guys are struggling to hear Matt or myself on the audio. But assuming you can hear us, yeah, this was going to be yesterday,
Yeah.
and so I'm not a big pot guy. I'm not a big drug guy, but from time to time on the stream, I'll do this thing called pot and popcorn, or I'll play video games
Uh-huh.
high, just because it's fun, and it's
Yeah,
legal
yeah,
here
yeah.
in California. Where are you? You're in Boston, is that right?
Yeah, more I used to be more in Western Mass now, kind of in the mountainside, out of the
Okay,
city now.
it's not. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's legal there yet.
It's like no, you can go to a store and
Okay,
just just
so
like
I
anything.
they open stores here, and they're like Apple stores for drugs, basically. So you go in, and it's beautiful and it's easy. And so
Yeah.
I went into them and I said, hey, can you guys give me something? I don't want to get high out of my mind. I just want to be chill because I've never had that
Yeah.
experience
Yeah,
before.
they don't sell that. Yeah,
Well,
that's
no,
not a
they
thing.
told me they did. It's
Oh,
yeah,
they
they
lied to
lied,
you.
the fuckers. It's I don't know where it is. It's this little box. I don't know what the fuck it was, but anyway. And then they also sold me this shit, this pop rocks that was like cannabis,
Wow.
and they said this will give you the chill high you're after. And I says
Mm.
great, and I took it, and I've never been so high in my goddamn life. So I just, if you're watching this, I text or I tweet Matt while I'm high as a kite because I'm going. There is no way I'm coming down from this in time for this interview, and he was gracious enough to
Yeah.
say,
Uh,
"Not a problem, pal. We can do this another time." So I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much.
yeah. No,
Listen,
it's pretty hilarious.
listen to me. My goodness gracious, this demo is one of the best demos I've ever played. And then
Thank you. Thank you.
I got to play half the campaign. Is that right? What you sent
You
me?
played, that's what I said it was half the campaign. I lied. You played about a third of the campaign.
Oh, I'm
So a
so
good
happy
chunk.
because there's even more.
Yeah.
I love
There's even
this.
more. There's even more. Yeah.
Okay.
So last week you streamed about a third of it.
Okay. So we're
Uh,
gonna we're gonna jump all over the place because your story is, at least I think from
story.
what I gather, is fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's ballsy and it's stupid and it's brilliant and it's brave, and I want to talk all about it.
Sure.
But the guy, so Matt is one of those guys, at least from my understanding, that when you hear your story, it's like, you're one of those, I mortgaged my house to make this game. I mean, you cleared out your retirement, right? You did. You cleared your retirement account.
To get started, yeah.
You
Yeah.
you
To get
quit your you
started.
quit your job.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
before we get into
You
the
make it sound
game, why
crazy.
don't we talk? Well, it's fascinating because, I would love to see the survivor or the successful bias to this story, because the story is a beautiful story when it works, right?
Thank
Which
you.
is the Cuphead guys, they
Or
mortgage their house,
tragedy. It doesn't.
right?
Yeah.
But I would assume more often than not, it doesn't work. But I would also assume you're never going to be successful if you don't take that risk, right? So just before
Yeah.
we get into the game, what were you thinking? Because you were teaching computer programming. Just kind of go with, I want to know about that before we get to anything else, because it's so inspiring and
Yeah.
horrific.
Thank you. I mean, I guess it's a hobby that's gotten out of control a little bit. I was working on game dev. What I would do is I do it before work. I'd wake up before work and work on it, and sometimes after work.
And you were a teacher, just so you're teaching middle school kids.
Yeah, yeah. Teaching computer programming, particularly this website called Scratch. I don't know if anyone in chat has ever used Scratch, but it's like a 2D game programming thing. And I taught that for years at like a public middle school. Um,
Was that a full
and just
time?
kind
That was a full time gig.
yeah, I was like, yeah, I was doing the full-time stable
Okay.
teaching thing, union, all that fun stuff.
Okay.
But it was just, yeah, it was just game deving as a hobby. And people on Twitter started noticing this game was called Impact back then. It wasn't called Severed Steel.
Right.
And it didn't look or play like it did now. It was far rougher. But people on Twitter and Reddit started taking interest, and then before I know it, I was kind of talking to my publishers, and before I knew it, I had a choice to pursue this full time. Um, Yeah, and I don't. There wasn't like a clarifying moment when it happened. I guess when I signed to Digerati was the moment when it happened.
So you
Yeah.
signed with your publisher, and then you knew you had some runway that they were going to fund the rest of the game, and that's when you quit. You didn't quit at first and then get a publisher after you quit.
Yeah, yeah. I was a little smarter than that, I guess
Okay,
you could say.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, did you burn those bridges? Like, what is the principle, or what do your bosses say when you come and say, "I'm leaving this job," which I know is, it's not an easy job to get these days, right? I mean, teaching is, at least where I am, a lot of people, friends of mine, have teaching degrees, and they have to move all over the place to get employed. But regardless, though, you go to them, and what do they say?
They were cool with it. The timing was fine.
Okay,
It kind of worked out just as summer was starting up, so
okay,
it worked out. I'm very, very fortunate.
okay. So it
Didn't
doesn't
no,
feel like a big
I didn't piss
risk.
anybody off.
It doesn't feel like a big
Uh,
risk to you then.
so I mean, a risk is in the sense that like to kind of gets. I mean, it was also during the start of well, it was also during the start of Corona, so that whole thing was going on.
Right.
So that kind of played into some like financial stuff. I mean, there's a risk to everything in the sense that like if this doesn't, I mean, all signs point to it should be pretty successful. At this point, it doesn't feel like a risk. I guess I would say at this
Right.
point it doesn't. But at the
Right.
start, yeah.
You're saying I know it was called Impact, and you were working with Scratch. Obviously, this isn't made in Scratch. This is made in Unreal. But when you're doing, have you ever done a 3D like game jam or anything before? When you say this is your first game, what have
Yeah,
you
I
been
messed
doing?
with
Game
I
wise.
messed with Morrowind for a bit. It's like an old school 3D RPG.
Right.
You could even Google. I think it might still be. I released a mod called like Greylock. So if you
Mm-hmm.
Google like OpenMW Greylock, I think there's even YouTube videos of it. And I just put like a custom map in Morrowind and mess with some game mechanics. It. I spent like a year on it, and the end result was like 15 minutes of gameplay. It's
Okay.
amazing, like how much. I'm sure you know how much time game dev
That's
takes.
right.
Like yeah.
It's
Anyway,
insane.
so it is insane,
Yep.
but a little short 15-minute Morrowind demo, and then I messed around in Unreal Engine 4 for a year trying to build an open world RPG, which nothing of that ever got released,
Right.
because that's an insane thing for a
And
solo
this
dev
was
to
this
do.
was still you working as a teacher, getting up in the mornings and
Yeah,
doing it. Okay.
yeah, it was as like a hobby after school in the morning, and then I did this Impact. I think I worked on it part time for like a year.
Before
Uh,
you got interest from,
yeah,
is it
yeah.
Digerati?
Digerati, yeah, that's who I'm
Digerati, right?
partnered with now. Yeah,
So I mean,
they've been great.
that's what okay. So what I experienced when I played this, and if you don't know the game, above us on the stream right now, you'll see kind of an 8-minute clip running of Severed Steel. Um, so you get an idea, but if you don't know the game, I mean, when I played this, it felt to me like it was this weird alchemy of a guy who clearly has never made a professional game before and a guy who is like a savant, right? Because it is so, I'm not even joking with you, it is so assured and it is so confident, but at the same time, it tries and does so many things that I think, quote, professional designers who've been doing it for a long time would have talked themselves out of. I mean, one of your
Mm,
fundamental mechanics is running on walls and using the environment to do all these stunts, right? And then you give the player the ability to absolutely decimate and destroy that environment. So I
yeah,
am, and if you're watching, I mean, you've got the whole thing is like voxel, right? So it's like you can blow up pretty
yeah,
much anything. You can blow up
yeah,
floors, blow up walls, whole little scenario setups that are meant to be really cool moments. You can totally have the player say, "Yeah, I don't give a fuck about that. I know you've set up this nice little gunfight here,
yeah,
Matt, but go
yeah,
fuck yourself.
yeah.
I'm shooting a hole in the ceiling, and a
Sure.
bad guy's gonna
Yeah,
drop." I mean, so
yep,
I could totally see us talking ourselves out of that in a design meeting, going, "Well, if our
yeah,
north star is we want this sort of John Woo action movie gunfight thing, and we really want to execute that, we can't put this element in because it'll
yeah,
destroy that North Star." but
Yeah.
it fucking works, and it works brilliantly.
Okay.
So the question becomes, is it just iterative and you're just like, fuck it, I don't gotta, I'm just trying shit, and it worked? Or was this thought through? Like, how did you arrive at this weird
Yeah.
but brilliant blend of mechanics?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, yeah, the fact that it wasn't indie helps because I could kind of just throw myself into the idea to start off, and I wasn't answering to anybody when I first got started. Um, the idea came, I don't know, it just came, it came as I was messing with voxel stuff for this open world RPG I was working on, and then I just was like, well, what if I combined a shooter with it? Because I loved FPSs as a kid.
Right.
Um, uh, and it worked out, but I mean, it has been a hassle, and I have to thank Digerati for taking a risk with me, because by the time they got their hands on the project, okay, so you were saying like destructibility opens up all these risks. When Digerati first took me on, you could shoot a hole in the floor and fall through the world to your death on every map.
Okay. Well, that's
And literally every map you could do that on.
right.
But they saw it and they went for it. So I definitely thank them for taking a risk. But the game is, yeah, go on.
I'm
yeah.
saying, where you were like, maybe there's that great value to getting started and just iterating and working and not thinking it to death. But were you ever at that point where you were like, there are game developers that can kind of play better chess than checkers, and they can see 10 moves ahead. Were you able to go, this voxel ability to use the voxels to totally change the environment is going to actually be a good blend with my necessity of having these really interesting shootouts where I can run on walls, slide on floors, that you're relying on to be there, but they aren't necessarily there?
I mean, generally, I'm pretty iterative and focused on the step ahead of me, but I think that idea was there from the start.
Okay.
But stuff like the arm cannon wasn't there from the start. The arm cannon wasn't until a year into development. Arm cannon was after Digerati.
And you had grenades and rocket launchers. Is that all gone, or that's still coming in?
There's grenade. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that, we haven't been putting in the demo because, you want it to be at the very end. So, yeah, there's dudes with... There is a grenade launch troop in the demo, but there's dudes with rocket launchers in the full game.
And that will destroy the environment as well.
Yeah, and that's been... You're right that's hard. Like wall running, it's one thing to detect a wall. It's another thing to detect a wall that could be pockmarked in any configuration.
Right.
So it's just... Yeah, it adds so much challenge.
Do you have a collision sheet? Like, you have a different collision map, I assume, for all of that, right? So you have the voxels for the visual, but you've got like a clean poly wall that you're running on, or what? How does that?
That's funny. No, the collisions are pretty much one-to-one with the voxels.
Interesting.
So what you see is the collision. So for the wall detection, I shoot out about 9. I sample the wall in 9 different places.
Okay.
And then from there, I take like the average angle, and then I use the average angle to like guess what angle the wall is supposed to be. So in theory,
go ahead. No, go.
If there's like a crater in the wall and you shoot out 9 lines at the crater,
okay,
and you take the average of the angle of all those lines, you'll roughly get what the wall used to be.
Okay. Has it been hard to optimize this game for frame rate, or no?
It's always a battle.
Yeah.
It's pretty good now. And just recently, thank you. Yeah. Just recently I brought someone on to really get the voxel stuff going now. Like in the beta that's coming out now to people. It's kind of funny. We worked on the loading times.
Yeah.
And then we also worked on loading screen tips. So the new problem is the loading finishes before you can read the loading screen tip.
Oh,
so it's
you got to put a button. It's like, I'm ready to go.
A little F. I know.
Yeah.
That's the thing with game dev. It's always like you add one thing and then it fractals out.
Oh yeah.
Into all these little issues it brings up.
I know.
Yeah.
And then everybody's got ideas, and everybody's got an improvement, and it's just like, oh my God. I mean, of course, the ideas I'll tell you on today's stream are the ones obviously you should listen to, but that's the of course.
Your ideas are the best ideas.
But so you were teaching Scratch, which, and I'm not that familiar with it, but if people don't know, I mean, it's not simple, but it's kind of like a easy to get into process. But you also on your own had learned like game programming, C++, or I mean, what was your background before this in terms of as a programmer?
just like hobbyists, like my degree's in psychology. It's
Okay.
not in programming. Yeah, just as a because I've always like I guess it's always been through gaming. Like I've always liked video gaming, and at some point you get to a certain age where you're like, well, maybe I should try making one. And I think a lot of it's like discipline. Like it's really hard to learn how to program, and I don't think I had the maturity to focus on it until I was like mid to late 20s.
Okay.
So I didn't do a heck of a lot of as a kid I messed with a little bit, but after like less than a month I'd lose focus and
Right.
go back to
Okay.
gaming.
Okay.
So it wasn't until later in life where I was like, I don't know, I just had the focus to actually like learn C++, plus plus,
Okay. So
learn
and
any
you
engine.
would I've heard in an interview once. I mean, you consider yourself like you're a gameplay programmer. You're not like you
Yeah,
wouldn't like get into the engine and all that stuff. You're mechanics and gameplay and rule sets and all that
mechanics.
stuff.
Yeah, I think that's, and like I'm forced to dabble in everything, like a little bit of texture work, a little bit of
Right.
animation, but whenever I go into that stuff, it's just like chaos. Like,
So
yeah, but
psychology, why are you here? Like, what was that path, right? Because you majored in psychology. Was that just because it was interesting, or you actually thought you might go down that road as a doctor?
no, it was just like I was like I graduated high school and had no idea what I wanted to do. And like as a larger note, like everyone's forced to go right into school, university right away, and I had no
Yeah.
idea what I wanted to do. But I had an interesting psychology course, so I was like, I guess I'll major in that. And it was interesting, but I finished the degree and I didn't really want to be a therapist and
Okay.
didn't really want to get into academia. And those are the two real routes for psychology. Um, so I ended up teaching instead, which is kind of related to psych. It's kind of not that far off from it, I
Yeah. You're
guess.
yeah. So, but were you always in the back of your head a gamer, a hobbyist, loving this stuff? And was it like was this a dream, or was it more just like I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just making shit because I think it's fun and who knows what'll happen? Or was it always in the back of your mind?
The dream, there always was a dream, but the dream was just to do something creatively for a living where I
Okay.
could like, wherever I am, open up a laptop and just chip away at my job.
Right.
And I thought at one point I thought it might have been writing, but it's not that. It turned out to be game development.
Right.
Uh, yeah, but just some job where I'm free to create stuff,
Do
be my own
you?
boss.
I think it's maybe an obvious question, but maybe not. But I mean, do you enjoy? Because a lot of people, I talk about this sometimes on the stream. A lot of people will love playing games, but and they think they want to make games, but making games is so different than
It
playing
is.
games. It's an
Yeah.
entire your brain is. I imagine if they were doing like an MRI, the parts of the brain that are lit up when you're making a game are totally not involved all. Well, that's not true, but they're not the same for the
Hmm.
most part.
My video's cutting out a little bit.
Oh, are you guys? Let me see how. Let me check how it's looking. Yeah, your video is
All right,
there. You go. You're back.
I'm
Is
back.
audio
I'm
is good?
back. Audio's good, video's good.
All
We're
right.
back.
So worst case, if the audio as long as the audio stays, we're good. But
Okay.
so but I my point is I would imagine that it's just it's such a different way of thinking about the world playing versus making. But when you started making, you found yourself genuinely enjoying that process. Like you like sitting down every morning and noodling with the code and figuring out how to make this thing work.
So I think now I do. I think this getting started kind of sucks. Um, I think at the start it was just pure, just like forcing myself to do it, just to learn programming. And eventually you get to the point where like you feel like you have some control and you actually know what you're doing, and then it starts getting fun.
Okay. So it's almost
But
like learning to play an instrument, right?
that's a great comparison. Yeah, where it's just suck like rote learning, just going through drills in the start.
Right.
And now
Okay.
it's pretty fun. I like it a lot.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know about the game, I'll give you a brief description of it, or I'm going to pitch your game. You tell me if I'm right.
Pitch
Okay.
it.
I'm not going to get into
Yes.
the story yet. I do want to talk about the story, but at a
Sure.
mechanics based level, I mean, I don't know what you grew up being influenced by cinematically, but I mean, I was a kid of action movies of the 70s and 80s. I love stuff like Speed and Die Hard and Indiana Jones and all that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so I look at this and I see so much. It's very much like stylish gunplay stunts,
Yep.
John Woo, over the top ballet gunplay stuff, right? I mean, that's kind of what this
Yeah.
game gives you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I know there were game influences. You've talked about Fear. You've talked about like a mod on was it Half-Life, a mod, The Specialist?
Yeah, the specialist. Yeah, you know your stuff.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what about were there cinematic influences? Because it feels very cinematically influenced,
Yeah.
or was it just game influenced?
No, I mean the Matrix lobby scene is
Right, the
the
major, of
cinematic.
course.
Yeah,
Okay,
like that scene is the cinematic influence.
and
And John Wick too, but
how
really the
old
lobby
were you
scene.
when the Matrix was out? Because you must have been like that
Oh,
perfect age, like 10.
12? Oh
Right. I
yeah,
mean,
when
that
it
thing must have.
imprinted on me.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
it
Okay.
was like a third parent. Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah. So here's the sequel's out this year. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Four, right?
It's
I know.
it's amazing. It's amazing how much time and nostalgia is powerful because Matrix
It's
2 and 3
fueling the
was
entertainment
shit.
industry.
Was crap. But I'm still excited for 4. Think about that. So okay, so what I wanted to ask you, so I'm going to tell you a really quick story, but it's got to relate.
Sure.
You've got to. I don't know if you've had this experience yet, but the very
Right.
first E3, 1994, I'm there with Twisted Metal, the very first Twisted Metal, and I must have
Cool.
had about 3 developers come up to us at the booth and say, "This is the game we wanted to make, you son of a bitch. How in the world you guys got
that's
there
funny.
first?" Blah blah blah. Well, this game.
Uh-huh.
I have to imagine this is in the back pocket of so many developers that either want to make this game or they've tried to make this game. And I have played the ones that have tried to make it. I've played Ultra Kill. I have played recently Ultra Kill Ghost. I think it's called Ghostwire or Ghost Runner, the ninja
Ghost
game.
Runner?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of these kind of, but every single one of them except this game, it almost feels like there was that genre of game back in the day with like the guys who made Time Splitter made one, the guys at Midway made one, Psyops, where it was like you had all of these like visual big marketing moments, but
Yeah.
they were very scripted. It was like, now it's time to do the thing that we showed you in the commercial where you are able to use your psychic powers to reassemble the bridge, but it wasn't
Yeah.
really integrated to the core loop. And this is the only time I've ever played a game like this, and even the club on Dreamcast didn't come close to this, where this didn't feel like you wanted to do these moments and you built a game around the moments, but 80% of the loop was just a traditional shooter. The actual loop is the stunt in a lot of ways. I mean, so the question becomes, again, this is why I think you may very well be a savant, because I've heard you talk about the game and you act like, well, I don't know, I just fucking made it. Like, I mean, this is a holy grail of action game designers.
Oh, thank you.
And it just seems, I mean, was this a impossible struggle, or was it like, I don't know, Jeffy, I just kind of woke up and coded shit, and then I went to the bathroom and I went and taught school and I came home.
That's funny.
I'm just saying, what was,
No, it's a
how
struggle.
hard was it to get that
Yeah,
fluidity?
struggle.
It is. Okay.
It's a struggle, and I don't think the game plays. I think it plays pretty well now.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
thank you, but I mean, I always see the flaws. I think that's just how I am. But I
Okay.
do think it plays mostly well now. I don't think it played this well till earlier this year, maybe a few months ago.
Okay.
It took a lot of. I got a few guys at Digerati, Jeff Luke, Steve White, who we've just been talking a lot over the past year, just ironing out the little edges. Even I don't think even the first demo that came out a few months ago, it doesn't quite play like it did now. It took a lot of talking with the community,
Right.
a lot of chats on Discord, a lot of chats on the Steam discussion to get there. No, I definitely didn't just wake up one morning and get it here. And I still think like this beta's coming out, and there's a few little gameplay things that I'm still iffy on that I think we're gonna have to work through.
But what? How did
So
you?
it's a
How did
constant
you?
struggle.
Okay, so was there a conscious process before you sat down to code, or how did you arrive at an ability for the player to actually want to do these moves and need to do these moves and
Yeah.
like it because it so easily, I've seen these kind of games and I've designed these kinds of games, they don't go off the rails, but they feel like either it's Ghost Runner, which is a cool game, but it's very much like a try it 50 times and then you get it right and you have the little moment, right? You're working for the moment. But this game is, the moment is just almost as matter of fact as, you know, moving down a corridor in a normal shooter. So when you put this in people's hands now, my experience with it was I immediately was wall running, slowing down time, sliding. I did a fucking upside down backflip and shot a guy and it just worked. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, was that just like over time it got easier and easier for players to do that? Or like how just if you can, because it may be so just marbled into the day to day, but how conscious was it you sitting down and trying to mold that?
So I'd say I'd say the moment where it became conscious is probably when I started playing with accessibility options and really focusing on, like, I was specifically trying to think about what if someone wanted to play with one hand. And then it was through trying to do that where I was really like, I really had to condense the controls down. Like I really had to make everything intuitive. Like, so you might notice when you're out of ammo, you'll pick up a gun, you'll automatically pick up an empty gun.
Yes.
Like I think that's huge.
Yes.
That is huge. And that wasn't in there till just before the first demo, I don't think.
Okay.
And a lot of stuff.
But
like,
let's just take that, because that is just for people listening. I mean, that is such a seemingly small thing, but you're absolutely right. Like if you read that in a design document or you walked out of a design meeting with people, and it's like, okay, we won't have reloads or whatever, but the ripple effect or the ramifications of that is it keeps the cadence, right? You don't even think about the reload and the animation and all that. You just kind of go. Right? Yeah. I mean, that you're saying that didn't come till later. Was that because someone proposed it or you thought about it because you were slowing the game down and you're like, how do I keep this pace going?
I was trying to test the game with one hand, and picking up a gun was like so difficult. Like you'd have to like, it just put such a pause in the gameplay. And to this point, whenever you were out of a gun, you had to look at the floor. But as far as letting the player feel flow, like it's a lot of those little things. Like that was good. So picking up a gun automatically was going to be an option that was off by default. Okay. And if that was still the case, I don't know how the game would play now. Like I hate
to keep interrupting you, but it's just my mind is blown because it is such a great it's such a great example of why iteration is so important and why magic is just, you know, I don't think humans are smart enough yet to really be game creators.
Interesting.
Because it requires, do you ever read the book Dune?
Yes, I've read Dune.
Okay, you know with Paul Atreides, how he can kind of, you know, spread out and see all the threads of what could happen when he takes the spice. A game, it's like the best game designer in the world ideally would have that ability that they could say, if I put this thing in, I can see how all of it's going to play. But I don't think most people can do that. So like this thing that you did because you were sitting there just going, I wonder if I'm playing this with one arm. Yeah. And you play it and suddenly the pacing improves. I mean, what a stroke of just wonderful karma. I don't know what the fuck it would be.
Well, it's kind of scary. In a weird way, it's scary too. It's terrifying. Then you have to wonder, like, what are the other features that I haven't thought about that also would do that? Yeah. Like, am I going to release the game and there's this one little killer feature that's like 2 lines of code? Yes. That would make the game like 20% more fun.
And if you're Digerati watching right now, which they are, they're probably shitting their pants going, shit, did we hire a guy who's good or maybe he just gets lucky? What if he doesn't get lucky the next time? But yeah, I want to talk about the one-handed thing, and I'm all over the place because I'm just such a fan, man. I am such a fucking fan of this thing. Thank you. You're very welcome. And I hope it brings a great deal of success. If it doesn't, then there's no real justice in the universe. Max Ankar, by the way, who is in our chat. Who is the head effects guy on God of War, all the God of War games from the very beginning. He says, this looks fantastic. And coming from Max, that's a hell of a compliment. He's also a hardcore shooter fan. Max, this is one motherfucking guy. He got a little bit of help. He's gotten some stuff taken from a lot of your stuff is an asset store, right? Because you're not an artist for the most part, right?
Yeah, it's a mix of asset store stuff and if I really need something unique, I've it's like a studio I'll work with and I'll just like pay them to make like a particular asset.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but wherever I can, I try to spin it myself.
Max, have you played this fucking game? If not, you need to play this fucking game. It is the shit, baby. It is the shit. So let's talk about the one arm thing. So because this is I have so many questions about the story, only because I didn't even know it was a one arm protagonist at first, right? I was just like, what are you talking about? When people are like, oh, she has a cannon for an arm. I'm like, how do you know this stuff, right? But the beginning of it was not you saying, like, what came first, a one arm protagonist, or you sitting down and just going, I want to fuck around with accessibility options? And I mean, what was the first thing out the gate?
The character being one arm was probably came to me like 3 or 4 months into development.
Okay.
Um, just kind of thinking about interesting characters, interesting gameplay mechanics. It just kind of it's like a nebulous cloud of like brainstorming that kind of came out of that. But then when I thought of that character, I was like, well, if I'm gonna have a character with one arm, I think the game should have a lot of accessibility options. To me, that just seems like those two things should just naturally go together.
Okay.
So I'd say the one-arm character came first, and all the accessibility stuff kind of followed from that.
Okay. So how are you planning on telling the story? Because when I hear you talk about the story, about the global warming and about these skyscrapers that rich people can protect themselves in, and she's a clone. I mean, where is and the fact that she has one arm? Like, none of this would have been on my radar if I hadn't watched interviews with you and heard you pitching. And then I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But where is that coming through for the player in the final product?
Yeah, so we're gonna start revealing some stuff soon, but just broadly speaking, is we'll have some art between the chapters of the game, which will establish what's going on, where you are. And it'll be pretty minimalist. I'm pretty against lore dumps or just like narrative dumps. It'll be pretty minimalist. Just kind of give the player kind of hints of what's going on.
Especially in a game like this. I mean, I heard you saying at the beginning you were looking at making this like you were inspired by BioShock, like you were going to have puzzles and you were going to have that's a hell of a and I think it's a great change, but that's a hell of a change. What was that a hard thing to talk you out of? Because that came from the publisher, right? They were like, maybe you're taking on too much, or how did that evolve?
I think it was pretty mutual. I don't think there were a lot of convincing had to happen. I think we tried a few of the earlier builds were focused on these pretty complex multi-stage levels. Like we had this, for example, we had this bank level we were working on where you had to break into the entrance and then you had to go to the top floor and like hack a computer. And then you had to go back to the bottom floor and you had to destroy a power grid. And you had to go to the middle floor and there was like a puzzle with a safe and an electronic floor. It was pretty involved. And whenever anybody tested it, they're like, all right, this is neat, but like, why aren't I killing people? Like this whole game, the combat's where it's at. Like, why are you making me go through these puzzles?
Did that happen before the publisher, or that when was that working? How long ago did you decide to prune all of that and just go for a shot of adrenaline, which is what it is?
That was probably a few months into working with Digerati. Okay. After a few attempts at this bank level that just weren't hitting, we're like, okay, well, what if we try really short, tight combat levels? And pretty much the first iteration of that, we were immediately like, yeah, this is fun. Goddamn,
video game development is so awful and hard, and also so and so magical, because again, those decisions that if you haven't played the game yet, and I love it and I hate it, because it almost reminds me of like old school Ghosts and Goblins, where you get to pull back and see the whole map, but you don't see the whole map. I wish you could. I wish I knew. I wish I could see the whole skyscraper. But regardless, you kind of have the camera pushed into about a third, and you can. I'm guessing it's a third of the map, but whatever it is. Yeah. And you can see like about 4 rooms or 3 rooms you're going to, or whatever. But each room is like, it's designed to be played, I assume, like multiple times until you solve it, and then you forget it, and then you move forward to the next room. And what it does is it creates this addiction, and it creates this like dying doesn't feel punishing in this game. It's like I died, boom, I'm right back in,
Yep.
and I just
Yep.
and once I solve a chunk, that's behind me, and now I'm focused on this one. And I mean, how when you're saying we decided to do short, small levels, was that? I think what I'm fascinated by is so much of this game just works that I'm wondering how much of it was you knew that was coming, or but when you just said you and Digirati decided to try some short, small levels and it worked,
Yeah.
was it like, oh, okay, I guess that works? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because it works brilliantly.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because before we made that decision, I was trying to force the BioShock Half-Life style narrative puzzle thing
Right,
with the Hotline Miami style quick die and start again. Like I was trying to cram those two things together.
right,
So the back end for like all the technology for like a quick restart,
right.
it was there. I guess I pretty much just had to like cut off all the puzzle stuff and cut off the exploration and just keep the quick restart stuff.
Okay, but it was iterative. It was just you discovered it as you went.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me ask about that because that's one of the things a lot of times I always tell people, you know, and I know you're kind of in crunch, right? Because this game is coming out pretty soon at this point. It's coming out on PS4 and PC in September, maybe?
So it's gonna be we're looking PC September and then nothing concrete yet, but consoles sometime after that. Yeah.
Okay, and if it is it one of those, it'll play on PS4 and PS5, but it's a PS4 game, is the idea? There's not like a
I
PS5, you don't know yet.
To be honest, yeah, I don't know yet.
Okay.
I don't know. We would obviously love next gen stuff. I don't have anything official to say about that yet. Yeah.
But you are crunching right now. I mean, this is your it's all consuming right now. Is that fair?
That's a fair way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is because a lot of times when I talk about crunch on the show, there's a lot of people, and frankly, younger people. It tends to be younger, and I'm not saying that's good or bad about why, but they really have a hard on against crunch, and I get it. It's awful. It's terrible. It ruins lives. Blah blah blah. There's no one supporting that in that way. But what I always tell them, they'll come at me and they'll say it's just bad management, right? It's bad management is why you have crunch, and yeah, that's sometimes why you have crunch. But your story, even today, the number of ways your game has improved that you couldn't have scheduled that, right? You could, I mean, you have the time you can schedule, but iteration is so crucial to getting these things right that it's not like you have a design document that you're going off of, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
so, I mean, I mean, now that you're only indie, you're mostly a one-man band for the most part. You are consumed by this. Fair to say, it sounds like. I assume though that you're not looking at this because it's your baby. You're okay doing it, but has it changed? What do you think about crunch as a whole? Like, would you want to be
it's interesting.
in AAA? Would you want to
No.
I mean, right? I just want to. I have a bunch of questions around that field, but go ahead with your
It's an
thoughts on
interesting
crunch.
question. Well, I mean, yeah. So it's something I have thought about, and it's a little different for me because it's my product, and I get, the revenue and profits play more into, how my life goes. Like it's my baby in a lot of ways.
That's right.
So my crunch goes directly into my future.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're, for a AAA dev and you're not getting any more money for crunching, it's just, and maybe for some AAA devs, like sometimes it might just be mismanagement.
You're right. I think so. In some cases.
Yeah, I feel like we had a pretty efficient timetable. But I also think that's an interesting point you made about how if iteration's so great and you can't always predict these innovations that are going to change the game, how do you schedule that? And yeah, I think I don't know how we've done it pretty good so far.
Right.
I think having milestones does help, like little mini crunches before the big crunch.
Right.
Because it forces you to take all these like semi-working ideas and like get them working.
Right. That makes sense. What about though? Like, okay, because I talked to the stream the other day about this, and I said, if I was starting in games now, there's for what I love about making games and stuff, I would never want to work in AAA. Like, I don't know why anybody, unless you're like really into you want to work with the latest and greatest toys or technology, and that's fine. But
Mm,
here you are, the master of your domain. I don't know if
mm,
Digerati owns the IP or you get to keep the IP. But ultimately, you are, this is your vision, right?
mm.
Why?
Yeah.
I always struggle given that, I mean, I'm not going to ask, I'll ask, you can tell me if you want to, but I don't imagine the budget on this is crazy. Right? I mean, like, we're talking AAA games. If you want to go crazy, you're talking Rockstar, like over $500 million.
Yeah,
But
it's
if
like
you
a
want to
movie
talk like
more
first
than a movie.
party,
Yeah.
you're talking like 880 million to 220 million. This is probably, I don't know. Let me just guess, sub a million.
I think it's fair to say it's well below 1 million. I don't
Okay.
want to go into specifics,
Okay.
but definitely below 1 million.
So if think about that, I mean, so the upside is huge. Like if
Yeah.
it hits, you have creative control.
Uh-huh.
You're the master of your domain. If I assume some of these kids you were teaching as little as 2 years ago that were taking
Hmm.
Scratch and computer programming, their fantasies. A lot of kids want to go into game development and make games and things.
Hmm.
Were
Hmm.
these guys? What would you advise them at this point if they said, "Oh, I want to go work at
Oh,
Naughty Dog. I want
interesting.
to go work at Insomniac," or
Yeah.
or would you say, "Fuck, dude, go indie, baby," because it's your vision, it's your thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, going indie is, I mean, I'm very lucky. I think there's a lot of games that have a lot of potential by super competent devs that, for whatever reason, don't end up with a publisher.
Okay.
Um, so
Do you
there's
real
a
well?
big,
Hang on. Do you really think that it's no particular reason? I'll tell you exactly why, and I think maybe either you know why or you intuit why.
why I had so much luck, or why?
Not luck, but a lot of the okay. Well, why do you honestly think there's no particular reason a lot of these games don't end up at a publisher?
Oh, interesting. I bet there is there actually a reason why no? Interesting. I guess I just have a viewpoint that there is always some luck that plays into success, and I'm sure
Sure,
there are games that, yeah, are great that just can't find funding for no
right.
fault of their own.
But again, I don't know how, and I don't mean to be condescending at all, but I don't know how
No,
much of
no, no.
that
I
is
hear what you
because
mean.
this is brand new or semi new to you.
That's interesting.
But
Yeah.
you basically have a game that is so commercial. So many of these indie games, which I adore. Like I'm playing a game right now
Mhm.
called Dwarf Romantic. It's a fucking tile-based game that is one of the most
Yeah.
relaxing, pleasing, wonderful games I've played in ages. But I can't
Yeah.
imagine unless it just gets lucky and gets lightning in a bottle, it's going to do that well for the developer. But
I
this
see. I
is
see.
commercial. This
I
is
see. Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah.
A
That's a
lot
good
of
point.
these indie game guys, make these great games, but it's like part of it is wearing a marketing hat and going, is this going to be something we can
Yeah.
sell to people, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I don't know. So what would you tell? I guess it's. I mean, Why would anybody go into AAA? Why do you think at this point in this industry,
Yeah.
why would you go into AAA?
I mean, my best, just coming, just from speaking from just a life perspective, like maybe salary and benefits, maybe
Okay,
if a AAA offers that, and semi-stability. Like I know you get a AAA studio closes every year, if you
right,
close every year, but it's still more stable than, going on Reddit and sharing gifs of your game and hoping it gets picked up.
right,
There's something to be said for just like cashing a paycheck
fair,
that
okay.
maybe attracts people.
But
And I bet a lot of those AAA devs maybe have projects on the side if they're
some
allowed
do.
to.
That's right.
Yeah,
Some absolutely do. Do you when you were making all the gifts for Severed Steel? Because the first
yeah,
time I even heard about this was Rocket League talked about the guys at Psyonix were like the reason they attribute so much of their early success was
yeah.
because their game was gifable. Like it was really easy to
Mm,
make gifts that people would look at and go, "Whoa, that looks fucking fun." Was
yeah,
that conscious on your part, or you're just like, "I'm making a game, I'll make some gifts," because your game looked so good, even to the point that you said your game looked better than it really was when you first started sending it out to publishers, right? Because the
yeah,
gifts were so amazing.
yeah. I think at some point that was in the back of my mind. Like I want the game to be really cool. I always wanted it to look like a John Wick scene or to
Hmm.
look like the lobby scene. Like if a player is playing efficiently, it should look good.
Yeah.
It shouldn't look like a game. It should kind of look more like a movie.
Okay.
So I think that was pretty intentional. Yeah, to make it look like that.
What I love about this game is you don't have to. I mean, I'm not a great game player. People will tell you. I love games. I play tons of games, but I don't.
Uh-huh.
I don't put any stock in being a good gamer. I don't give a fuck. I mean, I'm 50.
Yeah,
I'm
for
50
sure.
years old, and I just love the games. What do I care?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that
yeah.
said, though, this game makes you feel great. This game makes you
Yes,
feel
thank
like
you.
a badass, even if you're not. So I play this game, and I assure you, I'm not proficient, but I feel like a badass motherfucker when I'm running on walls. And then I think it's
Nice,
because you give me,
nice.
it reminds me of Twisted Metal 2 when we realized, even though it makes no fucking sense,
Uh-huh.
let's let the cars when they're in the air rotate. And
Hell
there
yeah.
were some people on the team kind of going, but a car can't do that. And we're like, we don't care. That's what the
Yeah,
player
yeah.
wants to do. So the first time I
Uh-huh.
experienced it in Severed Steel is I'm running on the wall and I see out the corner of my eye there's a bad guy like behind some barricade.
Yeah.
And I literally can turn on the wall while I'm coming off the wall, slow down time, get a headshot, and then
Yeah.
land and go after the next guy. And I'm like, this is not because I'm a good gamer. This is because the game is helping me out. I mean,
Yeah.
are there systems working underneath to sort of give the player a good time, or was I just lucky? I mean,
There's a little bit. There's a little bit. Like I want it to control nicely.
right,
Like in the latest beta, I made hitboxes a little bigger. Hitboxes used to be like tight against the character geometry. Now they're a little bigger. When you throw a gun, there's a little bit of a little help. Like even if you're on mouse and keyboard, there's no auto aim. But if you
right.
throw a gun, I'll kind of nudge the gun
Oh, it's
towards the
just
end.
so
Help
if
you
you're
out a bit.
listening to this, that is such. It's so delightful to know the magic trick and how it works because it's when
Can do
you're
a little.
yeah, but I mean I love that you have to do that and and that's another thing I think that maybe other indie devs can take from you that maybe they're like, why isn't my thing right out the gate, so successful. You seem to really be putting a premium on feedback and letting people play it
Yeah.
and getting data from that, and maybe that's
Yeah.
your psychology training or whatever, but there's a sense of like you're working for the audience in some ways, the game feels like. Whereas a lot of indie games, which are great, but they feel very so personal to the point that the audience could be there or not. But this feels more like
Mhm.
you're in the hands of a. I don't want to blow sunshine up your butthole, but I mean, it's like sort of. There's more of a showmanship about this game that feels conscious,
100%.
and it's appreciated. It's appreciated.
Nice.
So, the story is, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, and I know you
Go
don't
for it,
like
man.
lore dumps, but it's pretty and it's pretty progressive, right? It's kind of anti-capitalist, it's pro, hey, global warming is real. It's
Yeah.
kind of a liberal take on things. I mean, is that something, given the sort of polarization that we're living in America, at least, that is something that you worry about, or like, man, I'm just telling the story. But I mean, you talked about Snowpiercer being sort of an inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that does that ever come up in your mind, or you're just like, no, it's just what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think politics might bleed into everything
Hmm.
now,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Just kind of how culture is now. If it's there, I definitely don't want to be overt about it or bang it over anyone's head. It's more like these are the ideas in my head. This game is a creative output, so my beliefs are going to inevitably bleed into it.
Right.
Take it for what it is. Reject it if you want. Like, I'm not going to force it on you, but it's there. It's just who I am.
Got it.
But I'm certainly not going to make any of that stuff a focus of the game for sure.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I imagine you don't, but maybe you do. I mean, did the students you teach, do any of them know what's happening in your life right now? Like, do they look at this and go, "Oh my God,
That's
that guy
funny.
taught me computers, and he's got this big indie game."
I don't think so. I Not that I know of. I'm not going to make the effort to find
Of
out.
course, that's a little creepy. It's like,
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
me?
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you this, just
Who
because
knows? Who
you
knows?
okay. So the last time you were teaching middle school kids was how many years ago?
Probably three, 2 or 3.
The,
The
re-
years are
the
blurring.
okay, the reason I ask is I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm always fascinated.
Okay.
At least their group are really into uh, PC games, mobile phone games, things like Among Us,
Mhm.
Fall Guys, whatever. But when I ask them
Yeah,
about PlayStations and Xboxes and Steam, a lot of them are just that's not where they game. But I don't know if that's my
interesting.
kids or were a bunch of kids coming to computer class were those guys like, no dude, we follow PlayStation, we follow Xbox. Like what were they like at that age today? Are they console and stuff, or is that an older guy's wheelhouse?
No, so I think it's everything. The surprising amount of PC gamers. I think a lot of it's biased in your neighborhood. Like I taught
Right.
in a pretty affluent town, so I think a lot of the kids had pretty nice gaming PCs. Honestly, the thing that always struck me as crazy about gaming nowadays is that it's a lot just like gaming when I was in high school. The kids were talking about Rainbow Six. The kids were talking about Call of Duty.
Right.
The kids were talking. They weren't talking about Unreal Tournament, but they were talking about Epic's latest game. Like Epic's still on the
Like
scene.
Gears of War and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, Gears of War. Like I feel like I could like it was just the things they talk about. It sounds like me and my friends in like a high school cafeteria table like
Okay.
15 years ago.
But it was more
Uh,
PC stuff.
I felt, yeah, maybe because I taught computer science and kind of attracted that. So some of my classes were just all the students had to go to it. It was like general curriculum.
Right.
Some of it students signed up for, so it was a mix. But amongst the kids who talked about gaming, I mean, Fortnite was huge. I think Fortnite was number one
Right.
at the time. I don't know. I don't know if Fortnite is still big on that age group. Probably. It seems like
It's
Epic's doing
big, but
fine.
it's on the wane for sure.
Yeah, I mean, everything inevitably does. But it was Rainbow Six Siege and it was Fortnite.
Right.
Those were the big two.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. I don't know the makeup of like PC versus console players.
Right.
I think
Okay.
there was a
All
pretty
right.
good
I
mix.
was just curious because I when I was a kid and when I was
Yeah.
in the industry, like on PS1, school kids were crazy for this shit, and now I hear them more like you're saying, PC, tablet, Discord. Talking on Discord, playing on PC, Steam, voice chatting
Yeah,
on
PC's
Discord.
getting big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Is there gonna? Well, I'll get to that later. It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just looking at this list here because I want to make sure I get some of these key questions. So you went out. I guess maybe I understand the answer now a little bit more when I was thinking about this. But you were self-funding this. You were doing it in the day and on weekends before school in the mornings. Why, in this day and age, especially with Steam, you don't really need a publisher. But I guess the point was, I guess that you're like, yeah, but if I have a publisher, I can do it full time. I mean, was that the main
Yeah.
motivation?
Yeah, it was I mean we talked and they said pretty much if this works out, you could focus on this full time. On top of that, feedback, testing, help with porting, just publicity stuff, talking to gaming magazines, all
Right,
that.
right.
Could I have done it on my own? I don't know. I wouldn't, the game would not be, I don't think you and I would be talking right now if I didn't meet up with a
It
publisher.
does sound like some of the nice iterations happened when you had some other people to bounce ideas off of a little bit, right? And talk to people and get their
That's
feedback. And
huge. Yep. Yeah. And just yeah, it's just good to have like solo dev is fun. And sometimes when I look in the future, I do wonder if I will always solo dev because it does let you iterate. But it is good to have a little trusted circle. Like even if you're a solo dev, it's good to
right.
have a little trusted circle
Go ahead.
that you can bounce ideas off of. I just want to shout out. There must still be in the chat, but Bloody and Floating Door. Floating Door makes the music. Has been
Oh
with
my
me since
God!
before Digerati. I gotta shout them out.
Yes, please
Uh,
do. I want to ask you about the music, but yeah,
yeah,
I saw some of them in the chat earlier. I was kind of glancing over there.
yeah. I don't know if they're still in chat, but Floating Door has been with me since before Digerati, making sick music, giving me a little bit of feedback about how he thinks the game should go. Bloody joined a little later. He was a fan that just started making maps just as like for fun, just to throw some experiments out. And now he's here to help me get some polish on the maps and some nice new maps for the final stretch. So I'm a solo dev, but definitely have a few people who are really, really there for me. So thanks, guys.
There you go. There you go. See that? That's called, who's Stevie White? You know my name's Stevie White?
Steve White, yeah, he's with Digerati. He was feedback lead for a while.
Okay,
Steve,
there he is. He's been talking. I've been seeing him in there. So the music though, so it's interesting. I'm playing. I played through the game on the stream the other day. Is what you gave me, is that the beta that people will be playing, or is
that is pretty much what they're playing, but watching you play, there will be some changes based on watching you play.
Okay.
A few tweaks. Yeah.
Well, this is kind of, again, I don't know if it's ballsy or not, but for me, like I got Trey Trimble, one of our regulars in the chat, says the music is so good. I agree. I fucking love the music in this game, but I could see how the music is divisive. Like when I was playing the game, I saw people in the stream raving about the music, and then I saw some people go, I love everything about this except the music. And if you haven't seen the game yet, it is very correct me if I'm wrong when I'm describing it this way, but it's almost like it's like EDM, but it's also like it's very ethereal, and it's almost like it's got this kind of, not spiritual, but it's got this kind of very it's almost counter to the action that's happening, right? It's almost like opera a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, but you would think in a game like this, the first response would be, let's make it match the visuals.
Rock.
Let's make it rock, or let's make it aggressive, or whatever.
Yeah.
Why that? And I love that it's the music that it is, but was that always the intent, to have it sort of be this kind of sound?
Yeah, I've always liked a little bit of dissonance between the music and like what's going on in scene.
Okay.
Like, I just think you have an action scene, you could just do aggressive rock, but it's cool if it's just like I think Floating Doors music, it's got an aggression to it, but there's definitely some gentleness to it.
Yes.
And I like that, and I get why some people would play the game and be like why isn't there guitars? And like, you're never gonna please everyone with music. I mean, even the greatest musicians of all time have people who can't stand listening to them. That's just the nature of music.
Right.
So you can't please everybody.
Yeah, interesting. Fupy says, I honestly thought the music was AI generated, not in a bad way, but I was impressed with what I thought was an AI result. There does seem to be, and maybe that's just the music works with the sound effects really well, and the ballerina-esque aspects of what you're doing. There does, I know it's not like beats per minute or shots per minute or whatever that game was called, but there does almost seem to be a rhythm aspect to the game, but I'm assuming that's just sort of luck in your own brain reading into that. It doesn't seem like there's code.
There's no, it's not adjusting the tempo to the track, but it's good that it feels that way.
It does feel that way. Yeah. Maybe it's because you're
Yeah.
shooting so much, eventually you're going to hit the beat eventually. You're firing the gun so often that it's...
Fair point. Yeah, fair point.
The art, I've seen some art for this game, and maybe it's when it was called Impact, but it used to have more textures, right? It used to be more... Right, like the floors had more wood grain, and I mean,
what a lot of different looks, yeah.
Right. Why did you lock onto this sort of minimalist future style?
Yeah, I mean, iteration, like everything else, and just trying to think of something that is pretty readable visually, and that I, as a solo dev, could churn out enough levels with, and ultimately something that would be easy. So the game's gonna come with a level editor, as you poked around a bit with.
Right.
So something that would be a set of textures that would be pretty easy for new people to slap on things. So the end result's just a bunch of, and also another final limitation was that all the lighting has to be dynamic. I can't do any baked lighting. Unreal Engine has a lot of nice baked lighting tools. It has nice dynamic lighting tools, but there's just a lot more limitations when you're calculating your lights at runtime. So also trying to work with, runtime lighting. This just kind of answered a lot of technical and workflow.
It also, again, just that kind of, I was always surprised working on games how design challenge led to story value, and a story change led to coding value, everything
Yeah.
infuses everything else. But I think the minimalist style really helps the gameplay, right? Because it reminds me of like when competitive people will play Quake and they'll turn off all the textures of their enemy, so it's as pure as you can get to the sport of deathmatch, right? In this game, I never have a problem reading where enemies are.
Nice.
What was the logic at the end where the last X number of enemies you turn on some kind of radar and they're all red?
Yeah.
Was that just because it was slowing the pacing down because you didn't know where the final guys were?
Yeah, there was a nasty, and this is something that feedback guy Steve White and I kind of collaborated to come up with. Just like, the last few guys were a pain to find. It became a fun game of hide and seek.
Right.
That really killed the flow. So what we have it now is a certain it might be the last 10 or 15% of enemies. When you get to them, you can see them through walls. But it's funny, some players are asking to see all enemies through walls all the time. So I might add that as a mutator. Because it would be kind of, with all the destruction, it would be kind of cool to like wallbang people like a beast. So that might be like a cheat I put in.
Okay.
But I don't think it'll be in the full game.
Is there going to be I know there's like an arcade mode or like
Yes.
but is the main campaign going to have the ability, maybe when you finish it, to go back to the other floors and try to get a perfect score or unlocks or anything?
Yeah, I'd like to. In theory, it would be nice that if all the little tweaks in arcade mode, you could also apply to campaign. Whether or not I'll be able to do that by launch, I'm not sure.
Right.
Perhaps in like a post-launch, like campaign mutator pack, something like that.
Got it.
But I think it makes sense because I really want it to be super replayable. So I would definitely like to do that. But
the level editor, why was that an important thing for you to put in? I mean, for a multiplayer game, which I know this doesn't have. I know you've talked about maybe the sequel, if you get to make a sequel, might look into multiplayer, which I think would be really interesting and hard but cool if you could do it. But usually the level editors in games are when you're talking about a multiplayer game, like so you can keep it evergreen. But with a single player campaign game, I imagine a level editor is a lot of work to put in and to bug test and everything. So what was the reason that was an important aspect for you to keep?
yeah, I think that because the game is totally voxel based, and like I said, all the lighting is dynamic. Like anything can change during gameplay. Like nothing has to be done in the editor. So if everything can change during gameplay, why not let players build a whole level during gameplay?
Right.
Like in fact, like the tool I use to build levels is the same tool that people that will be given to people when I launch the game. It's the same. Okay. They'll have all the tools I have.
So you already kind of had it. It wasn't like
it's like all the tech is there. I mean, the tricky part, the work will come in integrating it into Workshop and in we're going to have a little beta for the level editor where we get people's feedback on the editor. Because I want it to be intuitive. And that's going to take a little work to get it feeling easy to use. But I think it'll be worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about emotionally, in the sense that, I mean, this right now it looks like it's going to hit, your budget isn't so high that it's going to take a lot to recoup, which is good. Do you ever lay awake at night and go, what if this doesn't work? Or are you pretty confident that you've got something? I mean, I think you've got something big, but what does are you just not that kind of a thinker? You don't really ruminate on shit like that? Or
I'm not a super catastrophic thinker. And I think that, so far the demos have gone down pretty well. There's no major red flags.
Right.
I think there's a few rough edges to sand, which I think I'll always feel that way. I don't know. You can always see room to improve, but I think we're getting real close. People like it. Some people play the demo for like 8 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours.
It's one of the few things. I mean, I've played it twice, which for me, and then I played what you sent me, which was a joy because it was even more.
Nice.
Yeah, that's rare for me because the feeling it gives you. I mean, you might as well just kind of say, buy this game. you will have these chemicals in your brain fired, and it will make you feel really good. Because that's ultimately, it's one of the few games I've played where it's that pure of a connection to just the feeling state is so addictive and so good that's really, yeah, of course I'm going to play it again. I don't care about the story. I don't care about new levels. I just want that feeling again. And it does a really good job of sustaining that, with less, drop off. So the next game, this game comes out. I assume you've negotiated for runway with Digerati, so you can launch it, and then you're still getting paid for X months as you're doing updates and bug fixes and all that stuff. But are you kind of free and hoping something comes your way? Do you have another game you're ready to go out and look for a publisher? Are you looking at a sequel and Digerati's like, unless something goes pear-shaped, we're doing a sequel? Like, what is the future of this?
Yeah, so release Severed Steel, of course. We have some post-launch content planned. And then, I kind of take life step by step. I have a lot of ideas for a sequel. It's certainly a tempting idea. Just from a personal standpoint, it would be nice to not look at a computer for a month and just kind of chill out, take a vacation maybe. But I do think that I'm happy I got into game dev, and I'd like to return again with a little more knowledge and see what else I can come up with, but nothing concrete yet.
Okay. What about, let me ask you this, because I think the most, do you game a lot? As a gamer, do you like to play games anymore? Or do you don't have time?
I don't. Very rarely I'll dip into a game just to check out what's going on. And sometimes friends will bully me into a game. I played Valheim for a bit, which because my friends were so into it and I wanted to hang out with them. But I don't game much nowadays. No.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm asking because there's people. It to me, the most exciting stuff is happening in the space that you're in the indie space, right? I mean, it's like any other medium. When you're spending less money, you can take more risk and you can try more things. And but there is always that group that are just unless it's AAA, unless it's super sexy budget, I want nothing to do with it. I wonder, I look at a game like this and I just go, if I'm one of these big guys, if I'm a Sony or a Microsoft, or I need to make this with AAA shit, right? I can't fathom you're not, because I think you've really cracked this better. Max Payne was great, didn't crack it. There is a new game coming out that's kind of retro looking that does a lot of what you're trying to do. I forget what it's called, cyberpunk themed, but I don't think they get it as well as you. But I think you're going to see somebody look at this and go, okay, let's spend $70-80 million on basically remaking this game, but let's do it with let's do it so we can charge $70 for the goddamn thing.
Which interesting.
Well, and shitty for you, because but I can't fathom that's not going to happen because it's so good. It's so fucking good. But so many of these people won't play it. Because not so many, but so many of these types that are like AAA guys that only want to play AAA. It's like if you have a great movie like a foreign horror movie, if it's got subtitles, no matter how good it is, they're not going to watch it. And so someone's got to remake it, and the remake's never as good as the original. Okay. Would you like to talk to the audience, good sir?
All right, let's chat with the audience.
All right,
for sure.
let's do it. We're going to bring in okay, so let's mute ourselves here on Zoom. And then we will turn on our Discord channel. Okay, can you hear me in the Discord, Matt? I can't hear you on the microphone though. Can you hear me at all? Okay, so you can hear me. I cannot hear you. You are not muted. I'm going to bring in Spazbo. Spaz, can you hear me?
Yes.
And Matt, can you hear Spaz?
Hey, so for some reason it said I had to turn push to talk on, so I just found a key to push to talk. Okay. But you hear me? It looks like you can hear me. Nice.
I can hear you great. Spaz, can you hear Matt?
Yep.
All right, Spaz, you're talking to Matt Larrabee, new indie sensation, who's pretty soon is going to be too big to talk to people like us, But for now, Spaz, enjoy your moment in the sun with the next notch. I'm kidding. He's not racist. Okay, go, Spaz.
All right, so in the demo, the arcade mode, you have to level up to unlock more levels
Yeah.
in it, right? In the demo, at least. I don't
Yeah.
know what it's like in the main in the main game, but like I was getting tired of replaying like the first 3 levels to unlock the 4th level on arcade mode.
Interesting.
But is it possible to level up your character through the main campaign, so I don't have to like keep grinding so much on the arcade mode?
Yeah, we're definitely still trying to figure out the right balance, because I want that sweet feeling of reward when you do something great and get a bunch of XP. So we're still balancing the rate of leveling up. I definitely have thought about campaign influencing arcade unlocks. So for example, you unlock the arm cannon in the campaign to use in arcade currently. So I might look into more stuff like that. It's definitely on my mind. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's all I had to ask.
All right, thanks, Spaz.
Nice. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to bring in Jimmy Gilchrist. Jimmy Gilchrist, you are on with Matthew.
Hey, Jimmy.
Jimmy, where you at? Oh, there you go. My bad. All right, you're on, bud. Jim Gilchrist, where are you? I'll bring in Rod the Mod instead. Rob the Mod, are you there?
You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you great.
Great. How's it going?
Good.
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I honestly, I wanted to kind of touch up on like being this self. You said you were a self-taught programmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm self-taught, but
Nice.
you. So what do you think about this? Also, I guess go for Jeffy too. What do you think about people that don't go to school for programming? You think that they have the same opportunities, like job-wise? Most big companies, they want like degrees and they want all that bull crap, and I was lucky enough to get a job without having any of that, and I don't think they really ask for it anymore. If you're good enough at it, like, I don't think they're going to do anything about that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I do feel like there's some holes in my knowledge I run into sometimes because I don't have formal training, like particularly like low level memory management, like really like when you're programming close to the wire, like moving bits around. I definitely feel gaps in my knowledge there. I think you can, but if I really set my mind to it, I could train myself in that and overcome it. I just haven't had to because Unreal manages most of that stuff pretty well. It's I think you can make it really far self-teaching. You definitely have to find alternate ways to make yourself stand out if you don't have the degree, but it sounds like you made it happen, and I'm doing all right myself. So yeah.
I think this game's awesome, dude.
Thank
what you got going on is I've signed up for the beta. I played the demo.
Nice.
Awesome. I'm all over the damn place. I'm telling streamers about it, man. I'm trying to get the word out there. You know what I mean? I was talking to you about it last night. I was like, oh man, you got to get Jared to play. And you've already met Jared. I feel like
Jared? Yep. No, I appreciate connecting us again. It's all good.
I was like, oh man, Jared's like, yo, I was like the first person to stream this game.
He's been following. He's been following for a while. Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Is the demo still available on Steam, or you can't get it anymore?
The demo was pulled down a couple. It was pulled down a couple days ago. I don't know if you already have it. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
But you can get new copies anymore.
Okay. So, but you're the only time anyone's going to have a chance to play it moving forward is either if they're in the beta or if they buy it, probably.
To my knowledge, I'm sure Digerati's in the chat and they can say if they have other plans.
Okay.
I'm not aware of anything else.
Okay. Well, Digerati, if you want to hit me up with some codes, I know Carmack got a code, right? Not Carmack, John Romero. You gave one to John?
We could. I'm not sure if I got you. I tried to send one to him through you. I can send another. I think John got one, and if you want, I can hit me up with a few more if you want. I'm happy to send them out. I'll get one to the God of War guys through Max. I can get some to I'd love anybody who you think will like it that will talk nice about it. I'd love to get one to Cliff Bleszinski. I think he would go ape shit for this game. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Very cool.
All right, let me bring in. Let me try Jimmy one more time, and if he doesn't work, we'll bring in Kadeo. Rob, was that all you had, Rob?
That's all I've got to say.
All right.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you
I
very
really
much.
dig the game.
Thanks a ton, dude.
Yeah, Rob's making his own shit. Before I ask you a question, Jimmy Gilchrist, Rob is like you in the sense that I hear so many people tell me they want to make games, but then they don't really do it, right? And that's its own interesting psychological conundrum. It's like there's a difference between saying you want to and actually doing it. Rob is a guy. I look at Rob and it's very inspiring because the guy like 2 years ago was literally going out with a pressure washer. And that was his job. His original name in the chat was Rob the Pressure Washing Maniac.
Nice.
That was his fucking job. And then he came home and he said, I'm going to start learning how to make my own game. And he's got a job in the game industry now, and he comes home at night and makes his own shit. So it's like there's something about that kind of person or you that says, I'm going to get up in the morning and just do it, right? I'm curious. I know this isn't about coding, but I love that you were a psych major, so you can talk about this too. But what do you think what do you think that is? What do you think separates? Like, is it are you born with it? Is it do you learn that work ethic? Like, or is it just you know there's that theory, and I think it's true, that says ultimately you can say whatever you want, but your actions are the only real thing that tells us who you are. Like, you can say you want to make games, but for some reason you were able to get pushed through the fact that you didn't want to wake up extra early to do it. Rob didn't want to do it when he got home, but he wanted to do it enough. Like, what is that in some way? What do you think that's about?
It's probably a boring answer. I probably have my parents to partially thank. They're always pushing me, encouraging me to do my best. I didn't have very good grades in school. I wasn't a particularly great student, so it's not like I'm not particularly like academically gifted or anything. But yeah, I think they were always just encouraging me to try new stuff, and they always bought me video games, which worked out well. Maybe not always the right idea, but it worked out for me.
Well, I got to ask you one more thing. This is like you've said this is your dream game. Like, you played Max Payne growing up, Max Payne 2 a lot. Dream games are dangerous in a lot of ways because God of War was my dream game. It's what I grew up playing games like that. I always wanted to make it, and I really realized only recently, once I got to make that game, I did some other things, but I'm like I'm good, right? It's almost like that was the fuel in the tank. I just had to get it up and out, and now I'm like going to other things. But hopefully that's not going to be your case, and you've got 50 games before you head off. Jimmy Gilchrist, are you there? Okay, Jimmy, your mic's not working. Well, maybe you are. Jimmy Gilchrist.
I had to do push to talk. I don't know if Jimmy's can hear me. Jimmy, I had to bind push to talk for it to work. I don't know if that's the same for you.
Okay, I'll bring in someone else. Jim, we're here for you, buddy. I know he's called in a bunch in the past. I don't know why it's not working. Okay. All right, this is Kadeo Hajima of the Connecticut Hajimas. What is up, Kadeo? Kadeo. Oh, he's muted. You're muted, buddy. I got it. Hang on. I'm gonna drag you up into this room. It'll work for us.
It doesn't say you're muted for us. You might have push to talk.
Hang on.
On your setting.
I'm gonna mute you guys and just bring in the people I want. It tends to work better when I put you guys all in the same room. I don't know why. Discord's wonderful, but it's also a little finicky. Okay. All right. So Kadeo, can you hear us? Jimmy Gilchrist, can you hear us? Kaiden, can you hear us?
Yep.
All right, Kaiden, you're up. Go. You're on with Matt.
Hey Matt, how's it going? How's everything? You already answered that question before. I wanted to ask. Wait, y'all can hear me, right?
Yep.
All right.
Can you hear him?
Hey, Matt.
Can you hear him, Matt? But now we can't hear Matt though. Now we can hear you great.
No, we're good. Hey, how you doing?
Kaiden. Kaiden, are you there?
Yeah, I am.
All right, can you hear Matt?
Hey, Kaiden.
You there? Hey, Matt, how's it going?
All right,
good.
well, there we go.
Going? Nice.
All right, go, buddy.
All right. Earlier you mentioned some inspirations you had for the game, like John Wick and The Matrix.
Yeah,
Are there any other inspirations, like anime, movies, and literature?
Oh, I don't. Geez, that would be cool if there was a book that did it, but I can't think of anything. I like Steinbeck a lot, and I thought it was, and his first book was like kind of more actiony, less like. Yeah, so that's kind of an inspiration, maybe Steinbeck's literary career, but I don't think books really played into it. Movies, yeah, The Matrix, the John Wick game. I mean, the list for games is huge. I mean, Superhot comes to mind for sure. Mirror's Edge comes to mind for sure with the parkour elements.
Well, certainly
Uh,
the
yeah,
special effect of rushing whenever you're
yep,
running along a wall,
yep,
that's
yep.
very reminiscent. I mean,
Uh,
not until you mention it. It's just that this game has such an air of well, originality that it doesn't
Thank
make
you.
me think of Mirror's Edge
Oh,
when
thank
looking
you.
at it. I'm too busy
Also,
focusing on how much it rushes.
thank you. Metal Gear was originally influenced. There used to be codec calls. That's how the story was told a long time ago. Um, that the Metal Gear influence isn't quite there anymore because like I'm going for a little bit more of a rush, kind of whereas Kojima kind of goes for kind of more of a slow burn.
So
But Metal
here,
Gear used to be in there for sure.
so in this case, it would be like real-time storytelling while you're playing through the game itself.
Yeah, it's kind of some told to the world, kind of some told during loading screens, a little art. But the main goal is to keep the story moving forwards. So no, there used to be codec calls that the action would pause for, and that's not a thing anymore.
All right, I got just two more questions.
Sure, sure.
Wait,
Does Ghost in the Shell?
one moment, Kaiden. Are you guys saying you cannot hear Matt or you can hear Matt? I can hear him great, but in Kaiden can. But I want to make sure everybody else can hear Matt.
Chat.
Chat, can you hear Matthew? Come on now. I'm waiting. There's like a 7-second delay.
Yeah.
10-second.
Kojima's slow burn is the equivalent of trying to cook a roast with a flashlight, says Scott McClellan. That's true. I love Kojima, but some of those cutscenes are goodness. Okay.
So true.
They can hear you. Okay, perfect.
Love it.
Okay, go
Awesome.
ahead, Kaiden.
Was Ghost in the Shell one of your inspirations by any chance?
Not intentionally, but I did think I loved Ghost in the Shell back in high school. So it might have been one of those things that subconsciously influenced me. Certainly, I feel like the environment and the character are kind of Ghost in the Shell influenced, but I was never intentional about it. I think it just kind of sublimated in.
The scene in Ghost in the Shell at the very beginning when the police guys are going up the flight of steps in the building and they bust in.
Yeah.
This game, and I don't know if it's the design of the enemies, but it totally. I mean,
Nice. Nice.
again, I'm not a gushing fella, but I've been wanting this game since I've started in games because it feels like that fantasy. It lets me feel. Kaiden, did you play the game or you've just seen the game?
I've just seen it so far.
Yeah, I mean it's something, baby. It lets you feel like, and it's not. See, you had also mentioned what was the other game you had mentioned? Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge is great too, but a lot of games up until this one really did have that. You get to feel like an action hero, but you've got to try it 20 times before you figure it out. And then on the 21st respawn, then you get it and it clicks into place. But I don't know what you guys put in the water there at Digerati and your company, but it's instant. You're instantly an action hero. It's great. Kaiden, did you have one more? Are you good?
Well, as a side note, someone in the chat, Scott, mentioned which Ghost in the Shell in particular is because the movie's the slow burn story with the very even color palette, but it's the TV series that's more reminiscent of this game, or vice versa, because this game has a lot of cool colors, blues and purples. And I asked if it inspired you, and it wasn't one of your primary inspirations. You said subconscious, though I think it's part of that cyberpunk aesthetic in which you find in most cyberpunk nowadays having that sort of color palette.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's just kind of, it's everywhere. Yeah, that's a good point.
Cool, man. Thank you. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate the call. Thanks, bud. All right, let me try bringing Andy Lee in. Andy Lee, can you hear us? And if you can, you are on with good Sir Matthew. Are you there, Andy?
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, David. Hi, Matt. You hear me okay?
Hey, Andy.
Yep. What's up, man?
Matt, I had a couple questions about your path with Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
The first one being, did you have a particular approach to learning Unreal Engine? Was there a video course you really liked, or did you just go through the official tutorials? What was your main path?
It was a lot of the official stuff, and then when there was a particular thing I needed to learn, like making a character animate or like map design or something like that, I'd look up. They have a live training series on YouTube where they'll just have someone familiar with the engine show you their workflow, and I'd watch those like 2 or 3 times and really try to absorb everything I could. And then very occasionally, if Epic didn't have anything, I'd just go to YouTube, and the amount of content for Unreal is pretty astounding. So I'd be able to fill in gaps with that. But Epic official stuff wherever I could, and then random YouTube stuff when I need to fill in gaps.
Appreciate it. Second question. You mentioned in Discord chat that you use the combination in your game of using Unreal Engine blueprints as well as sometimes C++ code.
Yep.
Could you talk a little about 2 aspects? One, when do you make that decision of where you use blueprint versus custom C++ code?
Yeah.
And secondly, C++ in Unreal, at least for some like indie beginners, it kind of has a reputation for being like a difficult or intimidating task. Could you speak as to the difficulty, or if you're totally comfortable with it now? That's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your questions. So I kind of follow Epic's recommended thing for C++ versus blueprints is like you'll make your core logic as much as you can in C++. So for example, the gun logic is mostly in C++. It's all code. But then for each gun, I'll make a blueprint for each type of gun. So like the Uzi is a blueprint, the M4 is a blueprint, the Glock's a blueprint, whatever, the shotgun's a blueprint. And for each of those, I'll have a bunch of properties I customize, like magazine size, rate of fire, caliber, and stuff like that. So pretty much you do your core systems in C++, and then for individual elements of the game, different guns, different enemies, different whatever, you make a blueprint for each of those. That's how Epic recommends, and that's worked out well for me. As far as the difficulty curve, yeah, I mean, Unreal Engine 4 is hard, like all game engines are. C++ is hard. So you combine them, and it's a unique kind of difficulty. But that being said, I think a lot of the stuff is managed for you. For example, you don't have to worry a heck of a lot of management. You do have to worry about it a little bit, but broadly, if you use it right, Unreal will manage your memory for you. So there's a lot of hard parts C++ that Unreal will handle for you, but there's also a lot of unique challenges. So it's not insurmountable, but it's definitely a challenge.
What about the pathfinding? The pathfinding in this game is really fucking good. Is that just is that off the shelf, or is that you kind of designing levels around the limits? Because it feels like these guys can track you pretty goddamn good in this game. I mean, what process was that?
Yeah, it's a mix of some of my own stuff, some of Unreal Engine stuff. So Unreal Engine thankfully does come with some dynamic nav mesh stuff. So it's able to recognize when I've deformed the environment and make a new nav mesh around it.
Right.
And it comes with some pretty nice default path following stuff. So it's pretty good about if you tell an NPC to go somewhere, it'll find a path there. Where I've had to do my own stuff, the dudes who jump around, I had to do that. I had to do some stuff for NPCs going through doors. I had to do some trickery with that. And a little bit of trickery, if you let Unreal Engine do what it wants, it'll pretty aggressively recalculate the nav mesh. Like by default, literally every bullet, it would recalculate the nav mesh, which was a little much. So I had to go in and kind of change only edit the nav mesh when it's a really big beat of damage.
Right.
But really, Epic handled the hardest stuff. I just had to kind of dress it up a bit for Severed Steel.
Gotcha. What about, so I played about a third of the game. I saw in the trailer and also the arcade mode, there's flying guys.
There are, yes.
How many enemy types do you have in there in this title? Yeah,
so I won't reveal them all, but as far as the ones that you can kind of see in trailers so far and are pretty accessible, there's the standard dudes. There's dudes who can jump around. There's jetpack guys. There's a flamethrower guy who you saw in the beta, and he'll be there for everyone else. There's a kind of a heavy armored guy with a grenade launcher. There's a sniper guy.
Okay.
There's guys who can cloak, who you saw in the last level, and they have silenced weapons. There's guys with rocket launchers on their back. There's guys with miniguns on their back. And I think there's a few more that we haven't revealed yet.
Are there bosses? Is there a final boss, or is it not like that?
No particular comments on that, but
Okay.
hopefully we'll have cool stuff to show soon.
Okay, before I bring in the next
Yeah.
call, I want to ask you because I played this and I mean you saw me. I rarely finish games at all, and it wasn't the whole game, but I didn't stop my stream until I finished what you had sent me. Like
Nice,
I ate
nice.
the whole meal
Yeah.
off the fucking plate. Right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
And I
It
licked
was
the plate
fun.
clean. So the question is though, what kind of effort has that been? Where every level or every they don't even feel like levels, right? They feel like every little chunk is what it feels like. Feels different enough that I continue to be engaged. Is that how conscious is that? Where you're like, okay, we got to get 13 more of these things. What are we? How are we twisting it? Like, how are you worrying about that? Or are you letting the loop being as good as it is do most of the heavy lifting and keeping people engaged from beginning to end?
I mean, I try to keep like a steady drip of new things. Like I try to, every few levels you'll see a new gun.
Right. With Mateus Larrabee of the Alabama Larrabees. Go.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I guess my question is like, it sounds like Unreal and stuff. This was kind of very like one of your first games or whatever. And I've played around a little bit with Unreal, and I don't have a programming background and stuff, but I've made a lot of like stupid mistakes. Like I've made I made this whole collision mistake with like it was like a door, and a capsule around my character was just a little bit too tall, and so I couldn't get through doors, and it took me like a week to figure this out.
Yep.
And I was just wondering if like the kind of mistakes that you learn as like somebody that's self-taught and stuff, just because like you sometimes the things you don't know kind of thing. So I was just kind of interested in that.
Yeah, no, I'm constantly fighting with code I made like a year ago, like stupid decisions I made. It's true. You find out you did a thing wrong and you have to go back and redo it. Unfortunately, I can do this full time. Because sometimes you'll run into a bug that takes like a week of just focusing on to solve. I guess I'm also lucky that I spent a year learning Unreal before I started on this project. So I saw I learned a few things. But I think it's just an inevitable part of learning a game engine. I don't think there's a hell of a lot you can do about it besides just keep making the game and learning from your mistakes. And I guess if there's any advice to give, it's that like for your very first project, like maybe be comfortable with the idea that you might have to reset it or throw it out. I think the project I worked on before Severed Seal I did have to throw out just because of all the newbie mistakes I made.
That was an open world RPG?
Yes. Correct. So I think it's just an inevitable part of learning. I don't think there's much you can do about it except keep learning.
Cool, man. Thank you, K-Man.
No problem.
All right. Somebody in the chat is saying, and I'm sure you get this, I get this all the time on Twitter. It's like, Jaffe, here's what you need to do if you want to make a lot of money. You got to do this thing with Twisted Metal, right? So this guy's saying, and I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the setup. You know what you really need if you want this to be a hit, Matt? Says VVLMM. Maybe not. Tell him. You need user level making, which Matt has, by the way. That's in there. It's in there now. And uploading with speedrun rankings like Mario Maker. David Jaffe, tell him that. You got it, pal. Happy to be of service. So there you go. I don't know if you're planning on that, uploading rankings and such, but
there's leaderboards. As far as like replays, I don't think I'll be able to get that into the game, like being able to watch someone replay. There's a pretty nice speedrunning community forming around the game. So I think speedrunning.com or speedrunners.com. I always mix the name up. We'll likely have a moderated speedrunning list where I suppose you could watch replays that have been verified.
Yeah.
So I think the community will make that happen. Nice. But there was definitely going to be a level editor. So I think I got a good chunk of what you said. Yeah, I'll take it.
All right, Jimmy Gilchrist, you should be working now. Go, buddy. Jimmy Gilchrist, come on now. He just texted me. I fixed it. No, you didn't fix shit. This is Alien Vertex. Alien Vertex, you're on, buddy.
Hello, this is Max.
Oh, it's Max. How you doing? You're talking to the head of the God of War visual effects department.
No, I'm no head of nothing.
You shut up, Max. Shut up, Max. Let me tell them the truth about you.
No. Come on, let me talk to Matt.
All right, fine.
Nice to meet you,
Whatever.
Max.
Whatever, Max. Go.
Hello.
You have such a great attitude. I got to tell you that first off. You were very
you.
positive, and
Thank
your game looks great. It's right up my alley. It seems very high paced. I hate like slow moving shooters, which a lot of them are these days.
Mhm.
And it reminds me a lot of Red Faction with the Bohemians and going through stuff. So
yes, good callback.
one thing is there's no multiplayer.
Correct.
Could it be in the future? Maybe
It's something
would that
that
be an option?
it's something that's definitely fun to think about. If there is a sequel, it's definitely something fun to think about. It would be an interesting challenge, especially with the slow motion and the pace of gameplay. Like, how do you make all that work in multiplayer? It's not impossible. It's definitely on my mind, but this is going to be a single player focused game. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at it, and I think it would be really cool to have small spaces and fighting here, and busting through walls and killing each other.
I agree. I'm with you. So we'll see what
Max. If I can wrangle a code for you, I'll get you one because it's sublime. You're gonna fucking love it. You're gonna love
Somebody in the chat already gave me one, so I'm already set. I'm very excited.
Let us know what you think, Max.
Yeah, I got a lot of work to do over here. But...
Just so I'm clear, then, have I been introducing you wrong? What is your official title at Sony Santa Monica now?
You could just say I'm a senior effects artist right now.
Okay, Max is very. But you were on the first God of War, and you've been on all God of Wars. Is it true? Let me ask you this: the kids on the playground like to say you're a genius. Is that true, Max?
Dude, you're only a genius in your own mind. You always learn things from everybody else. No one's really a genius.
Max will never take the credit he deserves. Fine, Max. I hope you're well, buddy. Thanks. Good to talk to you, Max.
Okay.
Talk to you
Thanks,
later, man.
everybody.
All right, there goes
Thanks, Max.
Max is badass. Okay, I think we got all the questions. I think I already got Kadeo's in. Kadeo, I already got you in, right? We already talked?
No.
Oh, here you go. Here's Kadeo Hajime.
Hey, Kadeo.
Okay, so for your demo, how do you balance feedback? Because I'm planning a demo, and sometimes as like a solo developer, it's very hard to know when to take feedback and when to ignore it.
Yes, that is the eternal question. Definitely hear everybody out as much as you can. I mean, your brain can only handle so much information, but at least hear everybody out, listen to what they have to say. You don't always necessarily listen to what they say at face value, but try to hear what's beneath it. Maybe it's really hard to say. I'd say just absorb as much as you can. And then patterns start to form, broad themes, and then you gotta ask yourself, is this theme worth addressing? And then also occasionally you'll get a very specific piece of feedback that's very enlightening. Like the flipping in this game, 2 years ago, someone on Reddit, I posted a GIF, and someone on Reddit was like, "Hey, you should be able to go upside down." And at first I was like, I'm not smart enough to do that. And then I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I can probably figure that out. And now it's one of the biggest features of the game, and that was just some random commenter. So I guess listen to everything you can. Occasionally there'll be diamonds, and try to find themes. But there's no one answer. It's every day is a challenge to try to incorporate it all. But it's worth doing.
All right, thanks, Kadeo. All right.
Thanks, Kadeo.
I have two final questions for you. The first one is the trash compactor. Why are you opening with that?
Love that question. Yes.
What is that? Because it's welcome to my game, die. Wait, no, I don't know what I'm doing. Die.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to just get the game starts and it's game on. Yeah. I guess that's what I wanted. That is a fair point that in theory you could die within the first few seconds of the game. If anything, if there is a compromise to be had, I could make the compactor so slow that it's symbolically dangerous without actually being dangerous.
Yeah.
And that could be the smart move.
I love the idea of jumping right into the action. I was just curious because at first, because I don't know what the controls are, so I'm just like, wait, what am I doing?
Fair. No. That's fair.
All right, so
That
let's
is
say
fair.
this game blows up like I think it's going to blow up, and you become, I don't know if you're wealthy already, but let's assume you become wealthy. What's the fun thing you want to buy? Like, you know, the two Johns bought Ferraris, Cliff bought a Lamborghini, Tommy Tallarico's got a Lamborghini. What's the thing you want to get with your ducats if you get real rich off this game?
Oh God, I'm a very boring person.
Well, Max wasn't wrong, by the way, about you being very positive. It is refreshing. There's a lot, and it's not.
Thank you.
There's a lot of people that, and I'm one of them. I mean, it's like, look, it's you know, I think it's just the way you're wired, or maybe it was the way you're raised. But like Max is like that too. Max is just always so fucking positive that he's an inspiring guy to be around. You seem similar.
Yes.
I talked to John Romero last week, and Romero was the same way. You would think of all people, Romero would have the biggest reason to be cynical and annoyed with fans. And he's just like, no, dude, this is fucking great. Is that, do you cultivate that? Is that just you got luck with chemistry in your brain? How do you be that? How is that working for you?
Oh, yeah, I guess, I don't know, I mean, obviously, it's a great nature versus nurture question.
Yeah.
You know, I've done a lot of, if there is a benefit, I've done a lot of meditation in my time.
Yep.
Which is it's just teaching yourself to just control your own emotions, really. So I do feel like I've spent some time learning how to, you know, manage my emotions. I think it's a good life skill. But yeah, of course, it also goes back, my parents were great, very loving. That's a big part of it too. It's, you know, how do you, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you going to buy?
Shit. I have thought about like a custom bicycle. I'm into bikes.
Okay.
And there's like, Massachusetts has a lot of frame builders who will like size you up and like make a bike that's
just for you.
Custom, just for you. So that's been on my mind for a while. So maybe that.
That's kind of fun. That's good. Good for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matt, yeah, somebody says carbon frame in the chat. So there you go. Man, listen, what a joy to speak to you. Thank you for all your time. Thank you for the codes.
Yeah, it was fun. That was fun.
I look forward to watching this where it goes because as a fan and as somebody who has wanted to play a game like this for a long time, I think you've kind of cracked the nut. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And best of luck, man. And reach out anytime. So nice to talk to you.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun.
Good.
Yeah, let's stay in touch for sure.
Absolutely.
I love
this. And it sounds like your Digerati guys are going to hook me up with some codes, and I will make sure I get those to some guys who I think would be worth giving it a play. So, all right,
fantastic.
Matt, chat, stay on. I'll talk to you for a few minutes, but Matthew is off into the night to continue crunching on one of the best games of the year, Severed Steel, with a title that really should be changed. It's a terrible title. It's a terrible fucking title for one of the best games of the year. I don't know where that came from, but it's true. All right, Matt. Good to see you, buddy.
David.
Bye. All right, man.
Thank you, David. Take care.
Yep,
Bye-bye.
Indeed. All right, there goes Matthew. Trey says the codes are in Twitter DMs. Thank you, fellas. I appreciate that. I need to see how many codes I got, and I will give some out if I can. I definitely want to make sure that I want to get some to some people that might be able to talk the game up if they like it. So I want to reach out, to the standbys first. I'm going to reach out to Cliff. I'll reach out to Alana Pierce, who has a big following, a number of people, and just say, hey, play this. If you like it, you might want to talk about it because it's really fucking good. But anyway, there you go. Rob the Mod, thanks for modding. Fellas, thanks for being here. Matt and Digerati, thanks for allowing us to take some of your time to talk about your great game. Fucking awesome. I had a great time talking to the guy. Yeah, Max is right. Guy's very fucking positive. I used to meditate all the time. I should meditate more. I could use more of that in my life. He's not wrong. It absolutely helps you kind of rise above your thoughts and realize that, that you are not your thoughts. It's good stuff. So, but in the meantime, I'm off. I will probably be game streaming later tonight. I don't know if we're going to stream Black Widow or not, because you got to pay for it, $30 to get it. So what I think we might do is stream the Resident Evil movie on Netflix, or the series. It's only 4 episodes, and we might do that tomorrow. But we'll see how things go. But in the meantime, Rob, thank you, mods, thank you, and all you guys. Oh shit! I had super chats. I didn't read this guy. Anybody who gave super chats, it actually was only one. It was Johnny Mentology says, I'm buying the game as soon as it drops on PS4, Matt. It looks stellar. any future plans for VR, or is that even possible? I know his answer to this. If he wants to tweet me an answer, I'll get it to you, Johnny. But the answer is, I've heard him talk about this before. I think anybody who sees the game automatically kind of looks and says, "Oh, I would very much like this to be in VR." But ultimately, he said he's talked to a bunch of people who know about VR, and they're like, this could probably make you sick. I can tell you, we had Drawn to Death, which is a slower paced game than this, up and running in VR, and I wanted to fucking throw up all over the place. So I don't know if it could work in VR, but my understanding is right now they're not planning on a VR version. But yeah, I think it would be cool if they could pull it off. Rob, did you want to come into the show real quick? Where's Rob? Hang on a second. I see you on the screen. Rob, did you want to come in, or are you just putting your face up there?
Oh, can you not?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, it is. I'm just putting my face up. People got to see my beautiful.
Well, let me put you on. Here's Robbie the Mahdi here. Let me make it big so they can see you in all your glory.
Oh my! Let me get that twirly stash going.
There you go. That's what Rob looks like, fella. Look at the collection of games you got behind you. God damn. So what do you got? What do you got there? You got PS4.
I got a little everything, man. I broke about 2 years ago. I went minimalist, so I just have the games that I love.
Okay.
This is the Annapurna collection. That's got Edith Finch in it.
Yes,
so that's
like
a
great
$800.
And then what is that poster there to the left?
That one, that's Oblivion Song. That's a Robert Kirkman novel.
Okay.
Comic book.
Okay, there you
I'm
go.
a huge Kirkman fan. I'm a nerd, guys. I'm not just doing things to do.
Mr. K has a question for you. He says, how is Rob always available? Well, Rob works from home. He's a computer programmer for a video game company, and he's also making his own fucking game. So,
COVID, I guess a lot of California companies decided that home coding stuff would be a lot better since we're not exactly needed for any of that.
When is your game coming out with the company?
That's early. It's still in early development. So I mean, from what it looks like it's a few years off.
Gotcha.
It's a while, but
somebody in the chat is asking, what plushie does Rob the Mod snuggle with at night?
It's a waifu plushie. It's a pillow, actually.
Where's the baby? Show us the baby, Rob.
Oh shit! Where is the baby? I lost the baby.
He's lost the baby.
I lost the baby. Sorry.
Fair enough.
The baby's gone.
All right. I will be streaming later tonight, fellas. I'll see you soon. Rob, thank you as always.